We are back continuing our discussion about returning to the dating scene. No matter what your age, it's always difficult after a breakup, a divorce, or a death, or maybe you've just had a lack of interest. So we're trying to ease the difficulty by offering up a bit of so-called dating advice. I've turned to my old friend Ruth Weisberg, who's been on the show, as you know, many, many times over the last 14 years, because I know that you approach life with a sense of humor, and I wonder if that sense of humor helps you get through both the good dating experiences and those not so good.
Well, the good dating experiences and the less good ones, I think sometimes it's fodder for an article, and it's certainly fodder for a stand-up routine, and I do choose to laugh. The interesting thing, though, as a journalist, it is incumbent upon me to be aggressive, to seek out sources, to seek out contacts for the articles that I'm developing. Yet socially and personally, we as women are supposed to hold back and wait for the gentleman to call, to ask you out, to initiate that. And that's where I sometimes am conflicted, because it's my nature. If I see something, I'm going to go out for it.
Well, particularly of our age group, we were kind of raised at a time when the boys did the asking, and then that transcended as we aged. But then we also were part of the women's rights movement, so it's like we're supposed to go out there and get what we want. Yeah, so it must be tough for us.
It is tough, because if you are aggressive, if you take the initiative, which I generally do anyway in my work professionally, then I'm seen as being too hungry or too aggressive for that. If I hold back and wait for them to call, well, then an opportunity may have passed by. So I'm sometimes not sure how to navigate that.
So how would you suggest that other women move forward then? If they meet someone that they're interested in and that person is available, would you suggest that they do pursue it?
I think it's okay to say, hey, can we continue this conversation, or this is really interesting. Put it out there, like maybe plant a seed or an idea, but don't put the whole garden in front of them.
Okay. Well, of course, you know, women always look at things a little bit differently than men. So to be fair in this conversation, we have to have a male perspective on all of this. And to present it to us is Michael Brent. He's a marketing and sales consultant. He has been divorced for several years, and he is over 50 and dating. Michael, thank you so much for being with us.
Great to be here.
So men obviously approach dating differently than women. Would you agree?
Well, I think we have the ability to take the initiative, but I think that men have some of the same concerns that women do when they start dating. Because you've been through a divorce, or you're widowed, primarily you're divorced, you've got the same issues of dealing with anger, dealing with being back into the dating scene as women are. And I think that men have the same concerns. And
so do you think there's a concern about confidence, or a lack of confidence, not necessarily with yourself, but just in general?
Well, you're not sure what to do. Mm-hmm. And if you look at if you think of the dating book you had in your 20s before you got married, you could take that and throw it in the trash can, because it's totally different, because we both have baggage. And in one sense, that can draw you together, because then you have something in common to talk about. And also, I think that women that you meet after the divorce at this stage of life are much more interesting than the person that you're going to be when you're in your 20s.
Oh, look, all three of us just gave him the great big smile. That was
touched on something.
Very good observation.
Because we all bring baggage to the party. Hopefully it's carry on and not freight. However, you know, and invariably I'm meeting men that have children, and sometimes I think they use their children as emotional hostages, because they will hide behind their this happened to me recently. Somebody that I was seeing, their youngest child is 15, so they weren't even spending time together. So it's like sometimes you can hide behind your children as a way to avoid emotional intimacy, to say, oh, I'm so involved with my children's lives, and that's a convenient excuse for not getting close.
Well, I tend to see these things in a much more positive filter. Mm-hmm. I tend to view both men and women not in that kind of baggage rate, but this is a complex matrix. You're attached to your kids. When you date over 50, you're not dealing with your parents, but you're dealing with your kids. And if you have a 15-year-old, you have an issue about how that 15-year-old deals with you and deals with your life and feels about you and feels about who you're dating, and that is your primary responsibility. So respecting that responsibility and going at a pace is something that for women sometimes is a problem, because we want to know we're going to get to the goal, because we don't want to waste our time. That, I think,
what's the goal?
Is this going to be a serious relationship? So sometimes we start out and we look at a guy, and this is what men tell me, and we're thinking, what is it about you? Where are you going to put up the roadblock? Whereas he's thinking, could we go to a ball game? What could be fun that we might do together? And that lack of connection, he feels pressured.
Right.
She sometimes feels frustrated. That's an obstacle we have to overcome.
I feel pressured.
Men.
Men
Are
do.
you saying men in general feel
pressure?
pressure?
What's been your experience in dating along those lines?
I don't feel pressured. I mean, I think it's just an opportunity to meet somebody and get something started. I mean, you're not going to go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 2 dates. I mean, it takes a period of time.
However, at our age, time is tight and time is rare. So sometimes it's like you give something enough time. If you really get the feeling it's not working, go anywhere. You don't take the time to fix it or try to correct it. You go, that was as good as it could get, and maybe it's time to move on. Whereas ordinarily, decades ago, when I was single, I'd be like, well, let's give it more time because we're still getting to learn ourselves and each other.
He has potential. I can fix him.
I can fix it. Guess what, Lynn?
I
don't
can
do
change
that.
him.
You know what? I don't take on any projects anymore unless
That's
they're
great.
home fix-its, not husband-to-be fix-its.
Isn't that great? Because that's the one thing that men, that I've learned over the years, that men always say they love the woman just the way she is, and the woman has said, gee, he really has great potential. As we get older, I think that we look at people and we just accept them for who they are, and we
Right.
say, we either like this about the person, and I'm going to accept it, or I'm going to walk away from it.
Or I
Was
could
that your-
tolerate
has that
it,
been
or
your
it's a deal
experience?
breaker. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if it's not working, you shouldn't continue it. But I think you've got to take the pressure off of it a bit, because it does. You're not going to know somebody in 3 or 4 dates,
Right.
and you need to give it some time. I mean, we've all been in situations where you see the first date, you know it's not working. That should be the end of it. But you can't put that pressure on the relationship or pressure on the date that this has to work or this has to be a certain way, because it's not. It's just going to push. It is going to push the relationship apart. You're never even going to get started.
Do you waste your time with a second or a third date if the first date wasn't knocked out of the ballpark?
I don't think it's knocked out of the ballpark. I mean, it doesn't have to be, and I don't expect it to be a knock it out of the ballpark date. I mean, I expect it to just find out if they're nice, if they're interesting, and if there's somebody I want to date. So.
How about you, Ruthie? If it's a first date and there's chemistry and you have a great time and it is a home run, do you move forward? Or if you don't get any of those things, do you say, thanks, but no more?
Well, you know what? Sometimes a single is just as good because it can set things up. So actually, a good barometer for me is, how am I feeling about myself? I mean, while I'm trying to get to know somebody and what makes them tick, what ticks them off, trying to get to understand them, I'm also paying very careful attention to my own response to say, how do I feel about myself in the presence of somebody else? Because you know what? You can go to a very fine restaurant and have a great meal and choke on your food because of who's sitting next to you. Conversely, one of the best dates I had was at Rittenhouse Square. The rats were running all around us, and we were having a soft pretzel and having the time of our lives. It was great. It was wonderful. So if you like the compatibility, if you like the chemistry of how you feel in the moment with who you're with, then I think that does have some legs
And
to
if
it.
you're a rat fan, then that's the place to be, apparently. I have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the obstacles that really do exist to dating when you're a certain age. You mentioned children. What happens if you have a child who doesn't like who you're dating? We're going to talk about that and much more and find out what you have to say when It's Your Call continues.